Welcome to Diversity Matters. This program is designed to highlight the diversity-related activities throughout New Hanover County Schools and the greater Wilmington community. I'm Valita Quattlebaum, Chief Communications Officer for New Hanover County Schools. This month on our program, Dr. Kent Guyon, the new Chief Diversity Officer for UNCW, joins me to discuss the inherent complexity in addressing diversity and diversity-related issues. So, don't go away. This very special edition of Diversity Matters gets started right after this short break.
Did you know kids who play outdoors have healthier lungs?
Totally.
I did. Did you know that boys that play with dolls make better husbands?
My son has lots of dolls.
But did you know terry cloth diapers breathe better?
I did.
It's totally true.
Oh, yeah.
Did you know that strollers have the right of way on a sidewalk?
Yes.
Yep, I did. Did you guys
Did you know that kids who eat breakfast have higher GPAs?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. That's actually what I was going to say.
Did you know babies should never touch silver? It's really bad for them.
I knew that.
Did you guys know that statistically friendly kids have more friends?
Yeah.
That's obvious.
Did you know most people think they're using the right car seat for their kid, but they're not?
Parents who really know it all know for sure that their child is in the right seat at the right age and size. Visit safercar.gov/the right seat to make sure your child is protected.
I'm putting that on my blog.
I just put it in mine.
Welcome back to Diversity Matters. Education is so important for everyone, and I believe it's critical to making the world better. Many students will graduate this month and head off to higher education at a college or university. I'm glad to know there are people like my guest today, Dr. Kent Guyon, who is the new Chief Diversity Officer for UNCW, and he is committed to preparing diverse students to successfully engage in our global society. Welcome, Dr. Guyon.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here.
So it's just so fascinating to me that you're actually a medical doctor, and you're working as a diversity officer. Can you explain to us how that merged together?
I'll do my best. It's kind of a long story, but it does have some common themes. I always thought of a physician as having multiple roles, not just taking care of patients, but also being responsible for population health. And while I was in med school, I became very interested in the area of epidemiology, looking at how different policies and actions impact health of large communities, and actually got into some health disparities academic research, and was just fascinated by how important it is to pay attention to those different elements. And really the core for many population health disparities is education. And that's where I kind of tie into what I do now in higher education. So, I think at the center is this idea that we can make the world a better place for everybody, and whether it's done through healthcare or education, I want to be part of that.
I see. So do you mean, for instance, I know that in the African American and Latino community, we have a higher propensity for diabetes. So education, by being better educated, we can help ourselves better?
That's exactly right. So in a lot of ways, part of improving your health is associated with things that are preventive, ways that we can have lifestyle changes, and some actually has to do with genetics, but we can control the part that is on the preventive side. And a lot can be said about education and opportunities there as well. If you prepare yourself, if you know what's available, if you have good mentors, you can make steps to improve your ability to obtain higher education and access the system in a more efficient way.
Okay. So tell me how you got there. That's a wonderful career that you've made for yourself. Who helped you along the way, and Tell me about some of your mentors.
Sure. You know, I think over time there have been a lot of influences, and I'd have to begin with home and probably my mother as one of the more influential individuals. She always encouraged us to use our talents to the fullest opportunity and to really keep your options open. That was one of the messages that we got on a daily basis. Her background was in science, and being a female in science, you know, in the 50s and 60s was pretty tough for many reasons. There weren't many role models, and some of the roles were limited. But because of her influence, I thought it was important to also look at opportunities that may not naturally present themselves. So she was one that I have to say was very influential. As I began to get more into the academic side, I had several mentors along the way. Some of my lab instructors. I was an undergraduate student at North Carolina State. And had the opportunity to work with just a brilliant scientist and great person, Dr. George Bartholomew, who was directing a zoology lab, and he would always challenge me to think about combining science with medicine and looking at different models of success that could be incorporated in different areas. So those are some of the foundational individuals that just kind of set up this opportunity to think creatively about how you can bridge backgrounds. Then when you get into the arena of how diversity plays out in higher education, you know, they're just a number of important individuals throughout the process, beginning with many of the civil rights leaders, and then getting, you know, closer and closer to what actually we can accomplish on a college campus. So just, you know, there's so many
along the way.
Along the way,
You
that's
know,
right.
many parents watch this show, so I'm so glad to hear you say that. And you said you're from Durham and you went to NC State.
Yes.
And they also ask us, well, why is it so important? Why do you as educators put so much emphasis on being global and being globally competitive? And we were talking about that during the break. Tell me a little bit about why that's important.
Absolutely. So, you know, I think there are two just compelling reasons why understanding the bigger world is just critical. Right now, if we have a graduate who is going to be employed with really any company that is more than a couple of people, they will have responsibilities that quickly link them to the rest of the world. And I'll give you an example of that. I recently published a paper on rural health in the rural communities, and within 15 minutes of that publication going to the internet, I had a request from a professor in Australia.
Wow.
To get more information about the projects we were working on. So the moment you have anything that really gets to the internet, it goes in all directions. And employers want to ensure that when they hire you, you are able to work across different cultural connections. So again, it's just part of what's a requirement. You know, we talk about
to be successful.
To be successful.
So if
That's right.
our parents want their students to be successful, then diversity is a must.
Absolutely, absolutely. Not only you know, understanding the global context, but understanding yourself and how you have got thoughts in your own mind that help you better yourself is part of it as well. So a lot of it is self-awareness, and a lot of it is understanding that you will, you know, as a mandatory requirement, need to be able to work with people all around the globe.
All different types of people.
All different types of people, all
Right.
different ages, multi-generations, and all that really, really helps organizations be successful at the highest level.
Now, I want to know how long you've been in the diversity side of things, and what have you seen change with diversity issues over the years?
Sure. So that's an interesting question because in some ways it's been part of my life, really since I was a small child. I grew up in a household where we actually had two different religious backgrounds that we practiced. My grandmother was actually a holiness minister.
Wow.
And my mother grew up in a Catholic family. So
How
a lot of
opposite is
diversity,
that?
a
I'm
lot of
telling you.
diversity
I'm
there.
telling you.
So that was just part of, that's part of our childhood experience. And I make people laugh sometimes when I say, I was one of the few children who went to a Catholic school who could also quote scripture, because that was part of the holiness experience.
tongues.
That's right. So, even from very early on, I just could appreciate and understand different perspectives on similar topics. And when you can do that, it just helps to lessen some of the controversy, and really helps to broaden your viewpoint.
Right.
So early on, it was part of my experience growing up. Really, once I was in college as an undergraduate student, I began to work with peer mentoring programs, and that's where we would connect with students and really provide a little bit of social support for navigating a college scene. And it can be really difficult when you are a first-generation student, or I even talk sometimes about first ever students. You don't even have cousins or uncles or aunts who were part of university or higher education. So you can be the very first,
Right.
and you just don't have the resources that kind of help you figure out what you should be doing. So there were some connections, as an undergraduate student. I continued on in medical school looking at health disparities. I actually have done some research into how different populations can better their health care around arthritis in rural communities by incorporating exercise. And again, just thinking about how we can bridge some of the gaps in population health. Fast forward a few years, when I started to work at a university, I was part of gender equity committees. I was involved in the Americans with Disabilities Act advisory boards. I worked with TRIO programs that looked at ways to get underrepresented students into higher education and really aspired to PhDs. So, for me, it's been probably formally about 20 years and connected in some way. And, at the beginning, I think a lot of what we were trying to accomplish was understanding that we were being compliant to some of the regulations. And that sort of moved from strictly compliance to understanding that we do have different perspectives and that we do need to understand more about those. Some people would call that multiculturalism.
Right.
Now we're seeing much more of an opportunity to leverage diverse experiences and perspectives into creating excellence within organizations. So it really has been a process of transformation over the course of time.
Okay. Well, we're so lucky to have you here in Wilmington. But right now we're going to take a short break, and we've got a lot more to talk about with this fascinating guest. So don't go away. Diversity Matters. We'll be right back.
I'm only 17, but I know about investing. Believe in something, buy shares in it, watch it grow. So, what if you could invest in the future? The future of kids, like a stock. Not the kind of stock that's about making money, but a stock for social change. A whole new kind of investment called Better Futures. When you invest, it helps kids go to college. I could be one of the first college graduates from my family, the first philanthropist from my neighborhood. And if I'm the first, then maybe there's a second and a third. Believe in us, invest in us, watch us grow. My name is Sydney, and I'm your dividend.
Welcome back to Diversity Matters. My guest today, Dr. Kent Guyon, is the Chief Diversity Officer for UNCW. So let's talk about the university for a little bit. What are your goals for diversity for the university?
Sure. I think probably starting with three main areas. One is campus climate. I think it's so important that we have a campus that is embracing and promotes access and activities for students from various backgrounds, and also prepares them for the world that they're going to interface with, which is multi-generational, very complex, international, global. And I think that's something that we really need to ensure that all of our students are prepared for that. The other area is around coordination, and there are good things happening. Many of them are small pockets in different parts of the university. It's going to be important that we pool our resources and work collaboratively. That collaboration extends into the community as well. Again, I see a lot of important partnership opportunities, K-12 opportunities, corporate opportunities, just many ways to ensure that we have access pipelines, that we share information, and that we really think about the bigger needs of the community as a whole. And then finally, I think it's important to have a solid strategy so that everyone is thinking about what we mean when we talk about diversity and inclusion in the same way, and that we have outcomes that we are working towards in a really consensus building way. A lot of things get tossed into the arena of diversity, and some of them really just need to be specific in what they are. And I think having that conversation and that discussion with the strategy that follows is really critical for campus.
Okay. And what would you say are some issues that diverse students face at UNCW?
Sure. So I think many times there's feelings of isolation.
Right.
That can come from not having individuals who have had the same experiences that you've had, and not having role models to help you navigate that. So, sometimes you're not only the first generation student, but you are the first ever student.
Right.
And just understanding what things are important, what things are less important, how to balance and how to really set up the best scenario for your college experience. Many students don't have that.
That's true. I can imagine like a Native American student,
That's
how they
right.
might feel so isolated.
Exactly. And a lot of times, even within the curriculum, we haven't done the best job of incorporating different narratives, different stories that are meaningful across the different students who are there. So again, that can add to that feeling of isolation. So as much as we can, we want to ensure that the instruction as well as the experiences incorporate broad concepts and multiple perspectives, multiple experiences.
That's good, so the students will feel welcome.
Exactly.
Because I noticed the students, they come into the university, but they don't necessarily graduate. They don't stay. So maybe strengthening your program would help that.
Sure. I think, again, I think that it ties back to the strategy. It is so important for us to identify the areas of need and to really have specific tactics and goals to reach those needs if we have significant gaps in graduation rates, then we need to see how we can help from a system level to really make improvements there.
Right.
And again, have that as a specific goal for making the campus a more inclusive environment.
Okay. And of course, we're dealing with pre-K through 12th grade. So what can our parents or our schools do to help our students and our parents become more aware of embracing diversity?
Sure, I think this is critical, and I think this is something that
This conversation
is critical, and I think the roles of parents and the roles of early education, absolutely critical points. I think it's important to always try to be open-minded and to embrace things that perhaps are not so familiar to you.
Right.
But those doors need to be opened by the adults when you're talking about kids.
Right. I think sometimes parents, we might not realize, for instance, say politically, it doesn't matter what your political affiliation is, but if we have a president, which we do right now, President Obama, I think when kids hear you saying disrespectful things, it can impact their ability to understand respect for authority.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think a lot of what drives some of the controversy is just that not understanding where people's perspectives are and feeling like you have no other options except to vent,
to bash,
bash, and to go in that direction. If you follow the history of political parties and sort of what the main purposes were at the times, you'll see that historically they've changed quite a bit. Mm-hmm. But if you don't know that, you'll kind of follow what you hear.
Right.
So that's why it's so important to educate yourself and to really be fully aware.
That's what I hear teachers saying. We need to get back to just basic levels of respect. Respect for everybody.
Absolutely.
You don't have to agree with them, but we need to respect each other.
So that's very curious that you should say that, because in the way I see all of diversity and inclusion, diversity in general is the vast experiences and varieties and the different parts of who we are as individuals.
Right.
Inclusion is how we have policies and practices to ensure that we can incorporate that diversity into meaningful outcomes.
Right. So we can get along.
And all of that is centered around mutual respect.
Oh, that's so true.
And I think that's part of what we've kind of lost.
We have lost a lot of civility. We need to take another short break, and we've still got a few more minutes left to talk with Dr. Guyon. So don't go away. We'll be right back.
Every day, online predators make their way into homes uninvited and unnoticed. Help delete online predators. To learn what you can do to protect your kids' online life, visit cybertipline.com.
Welcome back to Diversity Matters. My guest today is Dr. Ken Guyon, Chief Diversity Officer at UNCW, and we're talking about some really great topics on diversity. And one question I have for you is, how can we get more of our minority students interested in STEM careers, such as yours?
Sure. So, I think there are many different important career opportunities in STEM, and they're growing, and they're linked to the fastest growing job opportunities in the country. So they're going to become more and more important, as we go forward. I think you start early, you get role models, and you talk about the variety of opportunities that we are just really beginning to explore even further. Just this past year, I think about the National Science Foundation having their first ever Chief Diversity Officer and putting out a powerful statement about the importance of diversifying the community that does research and scientific research. Intel Corporation just invested over $300 million I think Google had a big investment of about $150 million around diversity, and so did Apple. So these big tech industries, they really get the importance and are putting resources behind it. And I think that's why it's so critical that we have students understand some of the opportunities that are there and get role models and get activities incorporated into the classroom that really help them see the benefits.
Great. And I just commend UNCW for bringing a person of your caliber to us, to the Wilmington community.
Thank you for that.
And what do you hope your legacy will be here?
Wow, that's an interesting question, having only been here for a month. So, you know, one of the things that I was able to accomplish in my previous role as a Chief Diversity Officer was to have cultural competency as a thread of the entire organization. So it was part of required student education as well as faculty and staff development every year.
It was required.
Required. And not only was it required, but it was also something that was embraced, and we looked forward to it, and we saw how it could get us having dialogue and discussions and really moving forward as an organization. Wasn't easy, but it was something that that I really think was important, and has really changed that organization. But those kind of cultural changes take a while.
Right.
It's not overnight. Most people say 4 to 6 years to change a culture is really what it takes. So, something along those lines I think would be really a neat way to think about a change. But I just try to get things done on a daily basis, and,
Well,
and we'll
I
kind of see
hope
how
that
it ends
happens
up.
for the university. I think
Sure.
our local media needs some diversity training.
Sure.
And I would love to see some of that come into our school district, and I will be the first one to initiate that from the superintendent's office.
Okay, great.
But thank you for being here so much.
Always been a pleasure. Thank you.
So thank you at home for joining us for this edition of Diversity Matters. If you'd like more information about our district's ESL program, feel free to call Maria Black at 254-4202. And also feel free to call my office, the school district's Public Relations Department, at 254-4245 if you have a story for a future edition of Diversity Matters. Until next time, I'm Valita Quattlebaum, and thank you so much for watching.